genetic annihilation has allowed them to concoct ways of murdering us. We can go to the syphilis experiments at Tuskegee, or we can go to the AIDS in Africa. I mean, look at this thing in Africa where we got AIDS, and so everybody in Africa all of a sudden, some of the first we saw popped up in New York City in the homosexual community, and now pops up in Africa, and tens of millions of people have got it, and the pharmaceutical company is going crazy selling them drugs that they have to stay on for perpetuity. Billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars, you are guaranteed because all these Africans have to take this medicine for the rest of their life. Give me a break. You tell me the guy who enslaved me, the guy who practiced colonialism against me, the guy who raped my mama, my sister, cut the testicles off my father, ripped me apart with horses, all of a sudden is going to come to my well-being and make me a medicine that's good for me, where his whole history is about profit and genocide at any cost, even if it meant killing his mother. And I'm not just talking about our European brothers and sisters as regards dealing with the black brothers and sisters. If you just read books on the Inquisition and the horror and the genocide waged against European working people and the women of Europe is so horrific, it makes even the transatlantic slave trade look pale sometimes.
The whole AIDS hoax has been about us getting to take the medication. There's no HIV that creates AIDS. They found that the HIV is a very innocuous, very benign so-called virus and doesn't cause anything. What does cause AIDS is drugs, the taking of medications. And what created the AIDS condition in the homosexual community that came what is known as GRID, gay-related immunodeficiency, were these poppers, amyl nitrate, butyl nitrate, these things that we use for the heart to dilate the muscles. Well, the homosexual community, the one who created it into these little popping things, it broke the seal. It made a pop, so they call them poppers. It was the inhalation of these things that began to bring down the so-called immune system of the homosexuals, and they began to have this immunodeficiency based upon overuse of this. Why did they use these poppers? Because when they used these poppers and they inhaled it, not only did they get the rush, but the anus began to dilate and relax. So the homosexuals were using this left and right. Thousands are being sold here in New York. And when they found that, they did not put in that poppers were the ones, and that drugs and these poisonous medications were creating the conditions called AIDS. They took the opportunity to ride the HIV-AIDS connection because they knew the money that would be made and that they could recruit people into believing that a heinous disease had attacked everybody. And where did it come from? Africa.
It's always wise to study your enemy. If you're going to defeat someone, you must know their strengths and their weaknesses.
People have been utilizing Africans to heal themselves for centuries, and people have been going to African shamans, African witch doctors to find cures for themselves, that Eastern medicine. So people have been going to African people to cure themselves for years.
The doctor that's given credit for a lot of the internal examinations that women go through, those instruments were first tested on women who were enslaved. And I can only imagine, well, I can't even imagine. A woman could imagine. But the kind of pain that that woman was put through to test those particular iron steel objects that would go up through their bodies.
In the United States, what they would do with slave children, and this has been well documented, to cure rheumatism and to cure gout and to cure arthritis, they would place their feet on top of a slave child and just keep their feet there for hours, thinking that the child, the melanin, would draw out whatever sickness the slave masters would have.
We know that a lot of things have happened in our hospitals. We know that experiments was used on our people in almost every city hospital in America.
Henrietta Lacks was a sister who lived in Baltimore and who had cervical cancer, and ultimately died of cervical cancer. And the doctors harvested some of her cells, and what they discovered in performing tests on her cells were that her cells were immune to specific diseases, specific cancers. So there was a quality in her cells that was resistant to disease. And they began to develop a host of vaccines and treatment modalities using the cells of this black woman. And they never told her family that they had harvested her cells, that they had made millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars.
Henrietta Lacks' own DNA and her cells are all over the world right now because it was so prolific they just kept on multiplying. That was an indication of the fact that as African peoples we hold the genetics for eternal use.
There's a book called Acres of Skin that talks about the experiments that was done on black men in Philadelphia prisons from the 1950s to the 1970s. In addition to the many medical experiments that are done on blacks in hospitals and prisons around the country, many people believe that chemtrails that are often seen over black communities purposely contain chemicals that create adverse reactions within the black community.
The chemtrails are dangerous because of what they contain: barium, strontium, and genetically altered red blood cells. What are genetically altered red blood cells doing in an aerosol?
If you go to Harvard, we have a place on the campus, one of the tallest buildings on Harvard University is called the Herbarium. The Herbarium. In there, every floor is dedicated to some parts of Africa and Asia, mostly Africa, where the young scholars who are working on their PhD is sent to study the fauna and the herbs and the plants of these places and to interview the so-called healers and witch doctors and come back to Harvard and tell what medicine, what medicinal purposes these herbs, fauna, and plants are used for. And then they create synthetic versions of it and sell that formula to the pharmaceutical companies.
There's a drug epidemic in a neighborhood and the hospital is quiet. Forget law enforcement for a minute. The hospital, this is the center of the community's health, and the hospital is quiet. So we're in a situation where the institutions by which we live are conspiring against us. There's no such thing as an institution that is standing when its lights on and people going in and out of the institution, and you're still not receiving the service of the institution. How is that possible that there is a standing hospital in most neighborhoods and everyone's sick? How is it possible that there is a police department in every neighborhood, several, and crime is still what it is? How is it possible that there is a public school and people are dumber? I argue conspiracy. The black community is really the only community that's really afraid of hospitals. If you go around the country and talk to different African American people, they have horror stories about certain hospitals within the neighborhoods. Out here in Los Angeles, you have a hospital called King Drew Medical Center. Well, it was closed down, but they had a hospital called the King Drew Medical Center. And if you ask any black person in Los Angeles, they say, well, that's Killer King Hospital. It was known for people going in there for minor ailments and not coming out. And there were all types of rumors about King Drew Medical Center. Some people said they were selling organs, they were killing black people, selling off their body parts. There was a story in the LA Times talking about how people were so afraid to go to the King Drew Medical Center that if they got injured, they would run from the ambulance if they knew the ambulance was going to take them to the King Drew Medical Center. So that type of reputation has been going on in the black community for years about certain hospitals in the area.
It is very difficult to use black people to experiment and find out cures. Because that's why, experimentally, doctors and Europeans use white mice. They use albinoid mice. Because the outcome after you go into a white mouse is what's going to happen to a white person. If you use brown and black mice, the outcome is not going to be for white people. because a black and brown mice is a melanated mouse. A white mouse is an albinoid. That's why they got pink eyes.
Melanin is an alkaloid. The chemical structure of melanin is an alkaloid, and it is similar to the chemical structure of other alkaloids, which are heroin, cocaine, and marijuana. And the other important aspect of this is because of the fact that melanin is an alkaloid, it binds to other alkaloids. So black folk who smoke crack or do cocaine, heroin, or marijuana are inclined to get higher faster and have a more intense high because of the alkaloid in the melanin binds to the alkaloid in that drug, which consequently means that people with African ancestry are going to become addicted faster and have a more difficult time trying to kick those drugs.
It wasn't just crack cocaine that came into the black and Latino areas. It was a way of life that came into the areas that replaced another way of life back a little bit. Just before the crack cocaine way of life, you had the cocaine way of life. You know, not to call any names, but the pinnacle is Studio 54, where you know this 70s New York City nightlife, where cocaine is everywhere and flagrant. In rap music, in early MC and DJing, you get MCs on the mic saying cocaine, cocaine. Somebody say blow, blow. All of that kind of stuff. Early parties. Before that, I'm talking just now 77, 76. Before that, go back 75, 74, 73. Heroin was the lifestyle that was pushed onto the black and Latino community. Each one of these destructive lifestyles were introduced into the community.
The youth in the country in the 60s almost brought us to the democracy we say we are. And the tyranny that rules our country by controlling the economy of this country decide to bring drugs and then use the war on drugs to create laws like the 3 strikes and you out and the Rockefeller laws that are as worse as any we saw in the Soviet Union during the Stalinist period, to put the young people in prison, many of them for the rest of their lives, for crimes that normally you would have walked after a year or two.